Good morning, good afternoon, maybe even good evening to every listener, to every watcher of this podcast. Episode 14 already. Time flies, everyone. It's amazing. We're in December already. And for me, it's already, it is 5 p.m. But for Lak, it's early morning. Lak, thank you so much for joining this podcast. If I'm not mistaken, you are in the Washington state.
Yeah, we're actually in British Columbia, Canada.
I'm sorry, I thought you were in Washington, but you're very close by.
Yeah, not very far from there for sure.
Thank you for joining this podcast. And before I hand over the microphone, the floor to you, Lak, I would also like to thank my colleague Kurt, who was going to join this podcast. He was really looking forward to it. It was in fact Kurt Juvins that said hey, you should have Lak and Binary Stream on your podcast. But 2 hours ago, he messaged me, said hey, Mar, I'm feeling very ill. Will it be okay that I will not join because I'm not feeling very well. But please continue the podcast. So we are having this podcast, Lak. But thank you again, Kurt, for introducing or reconnecting me to Lak. We met a couple of years ago, Lak. But let me stop talking and please introduce yourself, Lak, your company as well, your multi-dynamics company, if I can put it like that, because it's not only Business Central. You have many work streams that you're working on. But please introduce yourself, Lak, and thank you again for joining.
Thank you so much, Ingmar. Honored to be on your podcast. Lak Chahal, President CEO of Binay Stream Software. I'm the founder of Binay Stream. Binay Stream started 25 years ago from my home, and we have gone through a number of evolutions of different stages of the company, and it has been an exciting journey for us. We've always been in the Microsoft ecosystem. Before Microsoft, we were Great Plains ISV, so we started from day one as an ISV in this ecosystem. So we bring back kind of 25 years of history where how you build solutions in Dynamics platform. And one of the unique things about us is our solutions are embedded in the platform. That means we take the full value of the platform in terms of innovation, in terms of how it's architected, and also understanding some of the compliance and accounting side of it as well. And when you're building products, you have to think about how do you make sure the partner you work with, they don't bring risk to their projects, right? So as a Binary Stream company, for us, it's been an exciting journey, and it's exciting journey further down too. So we're not kind of in any shape or form. We were very much kind of North American company for many years. But over, I would say, last 5 or 6 years, we've been seeing great opportunity in Europe. Already 15-20% of our revenue now coming from Europe, and we see other parts of the world as well. So we are on a kind of global sort of growth path for us.
Oh, well, I definitely want to know more about that Europe growth, Lak. But before going there, so you started with Great Plains, Doug Bergam, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
That got acquired by Microsoft in 2000, I believe. Yes. So today you are doing GP, you're doing Business Central, you're also in Dynamics Finance, Dynamics 365 Finance. Can you elaborate a bit on that journey going from GP into Business Central, or maybe first into Finance and then Business Central, how that came to be?
Yeah, that's a very good question, Ingmar. First of all, I think one of the critical piece in this process is culture of the company, right? So we are kind of basically the top employer, best place to work in Canada. And we did that to make sure that our team is very adaptable to change, but they also, in terms of, having a culture of where we work together to be able to solve complex problems, right? So one of the story that I remember, first of all, I want to thank Kurt Juvins, who 6-7 years ago, we made a decision to say, I went to one of the conference for Inspire, and Satya Nadella basically sort of said, okay, how Dynamics was shaping up at that time. And we had kind of dabbled in a little bit of AX and looked at NAV as well, but we didn't really do anything. So we made a decision to say we're going to think, what is it beyond GP? So that was a decision that well before many ISV probably thought about, and we were very, very fortunate. And one of the incidents I remember is for Business Central was that Kurt ran a program called Red Carpet Event, right, for ISVs from GP. And there was about 20 ISVs, and it was phenomenal. We had so much help from engineering team in Europe. Sort of Kurt was mostly leading Christian as well, right? So they were both, and Lottie as well. So like they all helped us amazingly. I can't thank them enough that that program was so phenomenal. So like for us to really take our IP from Great Plains. So we were in the Great Plains space where it had a limited marketplace to some extent. This is mostly in English-speaking countries, right? So we were able to build a very, very strong IP over, we were a very strong engineering company. We were not necessarily strong initially on marketing and sales, but over time we have kind of fixed that as well. But really for us, basically that IP, when we launched into Business Central in F&O, so our goal was really we wanted to do it in a way that we can actually launch our solution both on both platforms. It was a big shift for us. So culturally, our team sort of like we had to really restructure the teams, and we had to make sure we can actually have capabilities to be able to learn NAV and Business Central as well as finance as well. And it's a big undertaking. So for us, it was a total transformation of the company. And one thing we found was that we were, because of the culture of the company and the type of team we built, we were able to kind of execute on it, right? And to be able to really launch our solutions. So when we launched our solution, we launched our solution fully. We didn't want to start with a minimum viable solution and then build on it. So we found very, very strong traction because these products have been already hardened and tested in the industry. And, like I mentioned, that most of our solutions from very earlier on, we were very industry specific. So we had a strong presence in healthcare. We had strong presence in hospitality, retail, real estate, transportation companies. So our solutions are really built in a way they serve a very, very deep specific purpose. And very much connected to what I would say is, they fit into the CFO's office. And that allows us to really kind of solve some of the most complex kind of problems underneath to be able to automate, but also making sure that you have the right data. So these are not solutions you nice to have. You must have those solutions to be able to run your business, right? So that was really, and then it's built by accountants, right? So it's not like, we have a solution, but we don't understand anything about compliance. So compliance for us has always been big, whether it's IFRS or GAAP, right? So for us, those are the kind of fundamental things. But really, the foundation that drives the success is that you got to have a team where you come to work, you should feel safe, you should feel respected, you have a room to grow, people kind of help each other, and people are accountable as well, and there's no politics. Those are my kind of very simple from day one principles, and they helped us a lot to be able to build on those foundations. But we built a strong company culture, which is built on growth, innovation, and teams.
Thank you, Lak, for those insights. Did I hear correctly that you are like employer or company of the employer of the year or before?
Yeah, we have a basically as a company, we set out almost 12, 13 years ago. So some of the things that can really drives us is that we are very much not just about the company that we serve our customers and our partners, the products we build, but also the culture in the company. So that culture is driven by probably I would say almost 12, 13 years of evolution as how we plan things in a year basis. How do we basically make sure that we have the right team? What is the team structure? How do we grow those teams? So we have a high level of retention in the company. We've been in Canada, top employer, best place to work. And we do it very systematically and methodically. To give you an example, we are a 150 people company, but we have 6 people in culture team. And they've done a phenomenal job in terms of making sure we have the right people in the right seats, and making sure that so we follow something called Vern Harnish's scaling up methodology, which is international kind of allows you to really kind of best practice your company. And I had a lot of help from other CEOs locally who are kind of technology kind of centric as well. And those are kind of the foundations of what helped us to really be agile and drive. And the other thing we do is we follow lean and agile to the nth level. And those are kind of foundations for us to be able to build on these and build really strong. What we say is that you've got to have a good strategy. You've got to have a good, people have to be happy in the company, making sure it's a process tools and data driven, making sure you're looking at your finance and making sure the money you spend, right? So you're resilient, sustainable as well.
I read today, I think it was on LinkedIn or maybe yesterday, that was maybe a kind of fluffy quote, but a pay raise makes you happy 1 day or 2 days, but working in a great culture makes you happy every day. I thought like, that's very true. Working in a company that you really appreciate and where you feel everything is aligned and the founder, the CEO is really concerned about your well-being. I think it's super important today or these days to find also to find, attract, and keep the right people.
You're so right there, Ingmar, because you could build something. To me, what's the point of building if the people in the company are not happy? So people have to be able to, you have to have an environment where the leadership is very much kind of like a coach type approach rather than being a command and control.
Yeah.
And that's been there from day one. And to be able to help people in a way that we are all there. It's not like, okay, here's a CEO, the leadership can't get to the right people. So one of the things we try to make sure is we're very accessible, and we like people to, if there's a problem, it's not a problem. That's an opportunity for us to learn. So you have to create an environment where somebody feels that, okay, their head won't be chopped off if suddenly you bring out a problem. So really what we try to encourage is you can speak to your mind. How do we improve things? How do we get better? But never be kind of satisfied that, okay, we've done this and we reached this stage. There's always a better way of doing things, and having that mentality of that there's a continuous improvements, right? So for us, those are very, very critical to be able to have that case in a way that, it's not a problem. Problem is opportunity for us to learn from. And how do we get better? And of course, we don't want to repeat the problems again, but also, those things are very, very critical for success, for sure.
Growth mindset. Definitely.
Yeah. So that's been like I mentioned, one other thing we had to do was really consolidate a lot of our ideas into almost a culture playbook, right? So one of the things we've done is we have a very, very clear ideas on, we can always go back to our values when we make decisions, right? So that means sort of in our kind of like 3 key kind of thing that starts from is growth. That means growth of our people and growth of our solution, growth of our partners. So it's basically really making sure that really we're looking at from the point of view of always thinking that we don't stand still. So that's number 1. Number 2, innovation. There's so much happening these days on innovation in terms of the cloud computing first and now AI. And taking, those are kind of like the technical side, but there is so much innovation that happens in companies where how do you improve certain things? How do you get better at many of the areas in there? And then also teams. So this is very interesting. So we found that there's a book by Patrick Lencioni called Ideal Team Player, and it has 3 traits of a team dynamics. So the first one is hungry. That means you have urgency to get things done. Second one is humble, means that you're always kind of recognizing team success. You are always learning. You're always looking for better ideas and you have a collective success. And the third one is smart. Smart isn't IQ, is emotional intelligence. So it's self-awareness. How do you interact with other people in the team? Do you understand the team dynamics, right? So those 3 are very, very critical components. And we found that was naturally fit for us, and we really built on it.
Can you repeat the name of the author again? Because you saw me looking to my other screen. I was typing in the name.
Yeah, it's the book called Ideal Team Player by Patrick Lencioni.
I think I found it. Ideal team player. Yeah, Patrick Lencioni, I found it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna have a look.
He's a big author on about team dynamics, how to conduct meetings, how do you build success, and he's been around for a very long time. And Vern Harnish, he's very much connected to, earlier on we were looking at Vern Harnish, Jim Collins, number of, Vern Harnish done, he has Scaling Up 2.0. There is obviously a lot of consulting company that help with that methodology throughout the world as well.
Super interesting. Well, I think you're the first person on this podcast, Lak, that's so focused on culture. I'm not saying that my other interviewees were not focused on culture or the culture of their company, but you are very clear in your view on the importance of culture and how that's related to the success of your company.
Yeah, that's a very good question, Ingmar, because typically what happens is you if you're a leader, you should lead by example, right? So for me, it's being sincere. It's being sincere to your partner, to your customers, to your team, right? And for us, I think what we've done is really what makes me happy is when I work with some really amazing people in our team, right? So really, those are and the way we've done it is when we are defining our goals and objectives, we have a culture, and the cultural goals are at the same level as our growth in terms of the company growth or many other areas. We give them the same prominence so that means you have to invest in that. That means you have to protect the culture, and you got to make sure you have the right people in the team. Because sometimes if you don't have the right people, if the team is small, it can be very disruptive. So this is something that now we're at a stage where it's been kind of like really great journey for us over a number of years to really refine the whole process.
Yeah. Now while you were talking about the culture, you've mentioned also two topics. One a few minutes, 5-6 minutes ago, about culture and the change from GP or adding Business Central and Finance to your company or to the work stream. Second, about innovation. Now, I want to start with the cultural challenges that you encountered when adopting Business Central and Finance. When I heard you mentioning this, I was like, yeah, is this maybe also from a segment perspective, meaning that GP and Business Central, they're in the same segments, SMB-ish segments,
yeah,
while Finance is more in the enterprise corporate segments. It's different sales approach. It's many different stakeholders, I think, in the enterprise corporate space. So was that also, or was that what you meant with the cultural challenge, or did you mean a different kind of cultural challenge when adopting Finance and Business Central?
Yeah, so that's a really good question, Ingmar. Let me kind of start off with, first of all, when we start transitioning from GP to BC. So one of the things I like about GP was that when the early days of GP, it was very much in every SI wanted to be an ISV, right? So the difference is that how do you keep basically solutions standardized? How do you provide the best value to the customer so that you don't have to continuously customize and maintain? And also, the thing is that over time, if you're an SI trying to, you have a mindset of very much time and material basis approach or consulting approach, right? I'm not saying, there's many successful SIs who are ISV as well, but really you have to have investment approach to your solutions. So you're going to continuously invest in your solution. And that means you really have to make major investments, and it's got to be over very much kind of long time based approach, right? So what I'm saying there is that those mindset are first of all very, very critical to say, okay, I do need to invest, I need to maintain it, and so on. So when we're looking at kind of like GP had this approach of that you build a solution that's integrated yet is separate, right? So those are the same kind of principles in Business Central, where you're basically building with extensions in a way that the cloud computing and some of those areas that came in. To me, what Microsoft's done is they've taken the principles from almost like from GP approach to then applied to Nav and to make it Business Central. So that's a very critical piece of the thing to understand that. And the good thing with us was that we were already kind of like aligned with building a standard products that are maintained, integrated yet is separate, because you got to be able to upgrade it. If you got a 2,000 customers or 3,000 or 4,000 customers, you can't you're not going to be able to customize it. It will cost so much money and also big cost to the end user. So that's where I think the game changer is, that you want to build products in a way that they engineered in a way that it takes the full innovation of the platform, but they're very easy to upgrade and maintain, and you invest in those products. And keeping up with the cloud computing and keeping up with the latest release of Microsoft to be able to make sure you can release those on time and so on. So for us, I think it was kind of like I was saying before, that in terms of for us, the critical thing was that we had to build a knowledge of Nav and Business Central first, right? That means we had to construct the teams in a way that with GP we knew for 20 years, but for we had to really learn Nav, and we had to learn AX and FNO, right? And those were kind of like not an easy thing you can just kind of grab over a few days. You really have to have, so we had to construct the team the right way to be able to put the team together. So we have different experts from, so one of the things we decided to do was we didn't want to leave anybody behind. So we didn't want to say, okay, you are a GP, now we're just going to basically let you go. So we actually basically have people who pivoted to Business Central and FNO. And that was the coolest thing we did, sort of like in a way that we want to make sure nobody feels that they're left behind, right? So that was one thing. You're right, absolutely. Going back to whether it's enterprise and SMB, that's a huge kind of like a learning process. The partners in what I would say is the partner who came from GP are very different. The partners who came from NAV are very different. The partners who are coming from AX or finance, they all have different approaches, right? So for me, it's really kind of understanding, and really our journey now is that more and more we are gearing up for Dynamics 365 Finance or Business Central, right? The GP is kind of obviously sunset and going through a change process. It'll all end up in Business Central, hopefully. But so those are you absolutely hit the nail on the head, that it's understanding what are the kind of difference in the customer needs are, right? Understanding that how critical is in terms of managing enterprise level products, right? So for us, it's kind of like it's a game changer. So on one side, we could have a small deal of 15,000, 20,000 in Business Central. On Dynamics 360 Finance, our deal can get into close to $1 million sometimes, right? And that means the people who service those customers and how we project manage, or how do we kind of like work with them with some of the enterprise level company is very, very different, right? So those are our kind of, we're still in the progress of that, but it's kind of working with the major SIs and learning from them, and also learning from Microsoft as well. Because for the FNO, Microsoft got a fast track program, which is phenomenal, sort of like their best practices, but also on the Business Central side of things, working closely with Microsoft, which is to me is very, very critical as well.
Yeah, I definitely hear you on the differences between the two solutions and how it's different approaches, not only from your sales perspective, the culture, but also within Microsoft. For instance, fast track with finance, but not with Business Central, but it's because of the different sales motion, different type of customer. Yeah, I fully hear you. I want to touch a second word that you mentioned also a few minutes ago, like that's the word innovation. And you mentioned already, like, hey, Microsoft is moving forward from an innovation perspective. We are sharing, let me use that word, a lot of innovation with our ecosystem, with partners like Binary Stream. But you as a partner, you only have 24 hours. You have a team that can only absorb a certain amount of innovation. And also, of course, your customers can only absorb a certain amount of innovation per time segments. So how do you manage that balance between Microsoft asking you like, hey, Lak, you have to invest here, this innovation, this innovation, this innovation, this innovation, this innovation, and you need to make that decision like, hey, this is where we're going to innovate, maybe for this industry, and this is what we'll maybe innovate in the future. How do you keep that balance? How do you decide which innovations are coming in and which innovations are keeping outside of your company?
That's a phenomenal question there, Ingmar. I totally agree with you that being an ISV and we are not Microsoft, or we don't have the scale of resources that we can go in and say, okay, we can invest. So our time is very valuable, and time of the employees, as well as making sure how do we balance that. So we were very fortunate that with Microsoft, we got involved very, very early on. One thing we want to do was to really work very closely with Microsoft, and the way that happened was that we're on the partner advisory council as well. And so very early on, we already knew behind the scenes Microsoft's already going towards AI and so on. So for us, our biggest cost being an ISV is our resources and the people, right? So that means we want to help our people to be able to not just kind of basically build the products and the innovation we have in the products themselves for the customer and the partners, right? But also in terms of the job they do every year, right? Sort of every day, I would say. So in those areas, it's very, very critical that for us it's a worthwhile the investment in whether we're looking at Copilot Studio, in terms of the technology for the AI. We were actually already, even before Copilots came out, we were already looking at Azure OpenAI, right? So some of the areas we already had built kind of like a proof of concept on kind of like, so for us, it's always about how much investments we balance between the products we have, but also on the innovation side as well. And that's always been there as a company's approach to say, if you want to stay ahead of the game, we got to continuously change, right? And we got to adapt to the change. Those are very, very critical principles, and make sure it's a value driven, right? So it's providing value to the customer. So what we done is we had kind of like out of our team, we had dedicated resources who basically purely work on the AI pieces in there. So what we done is on Business Central especially, we built a number of cases where we work with first of all, internally, we finalized from the product management point of view to say, what are the key areas we can automate where AI can help us, right? And we were able to kind of do that very successfully with also talking to our customers as well. And we're getting a lot of the feedback. So really, it was a no-brainer for us internally, like for instance, from an internal development point of view, whether we're looking GitHub and Visual Studio, many of the tools Microsoft uses, right? We know we can improve efficiency on that. So the way we did that internally was that we looked at every role and say, okay, can we apply AI to these? Whether we're looking at Teams or whether we're looking at sales from, Dynamics 365 Sales Hub. We're looking at from the point of view of even ERP. So we went through role by role within the company and say, where can we apply AI, and let's try to prove this concept, right? So we have a regular updates within the company that looks at the AI innovations internally, and we share with the team, and we encourage people to innovate on those. But you're right, with an ISV of our size, this resources are always limited, right? So we have to balance that. But it's also a conscious decision to say, we want to stay ahead of the game, and we want to make sure that our products are AI enabled. And we already have right now many of the examples that we can run through. And we are almost at a stage where next step is really how do we monetize through agents, right? Using whether it's a Copilot Studio, building making sure that the agents are going to be able to really help us to drive. And to be honest, in our area, there are a number of scenarios. It's going to be amazing to be able to provide those insights in there.
Well, you're mentioning agents, and then last week or 2 weeks ago, I had a podcast internally with colleagues of mine about autonomous agents. That also seems very interesting. So the progress is going so fast, and so while listening to my colleagues on agents and autonomous agents, I was like, damn. Well, excuse my language, but I was like, another innovation, and what's next? And you as an ISV, you have to keep up, and then of course having again that balance between your customers, Microsoft, your own internal workforce that needs to be up to date as well. They need to learn, constantly learning. That seems like a constant balance. I'm showing my hands here of not two balls, but like several balls in the air, and trying to keep them all in balance and not let them fall on the ground.
You got it. That's how I kind of visualize sometimes is you're kind of, whether you have balls in the air or you're spinning plates, what you see, one of those things, you got to keep going and make sure you keep it in the air for absolutely. And that's always a challenge. But we proportionally sort of like, I would say out of our more than 100 engineering people, there's probably, I would say 5-10% of the people are dedicated to AI research and making sure that we are investing in those. And so we have teams within the Dynamics 365 finance side of things, but also on Business Central and also on the Power Apps as well, right? We use Power Apps for our portals. And there is a lot of innovation happening in those areas as well.
I would love to continue on innovation, but there's one other aspect, Lak, that we haven't touched yet, which is also very important from an ISV perspective, and that's scalability. Scaling your solution to multiple customers. You mentioned already Europe. That's today like 20%. You mentioned 20% of your revenue comes out of Europe. I definitely would like to learn, when did you start that scalability into Europe, and is Europe like your first step outside of the Canada? And of course, I know there's United States of America, and I know those are two different countries. But I assume that today you are already in the United States and the USA. And is it then after USA you went to Europe, or what are the steps you have taken outside of Canada?
That's a good question as well, and that's the challenging piece there, Ingmar, is that if you want to build a world presence, you really need a lot of resources. You need to have people who can basically provide the local support, but also cover from a sport point of view as well, that you want to be able to cover the time zones. And we have some phenomenal customers like Total Energies, for instance. So that's in 130 countries, right? So one of the things we always done is on our product is to provide what we call is a localization support, right? So that's one side of scalability, where very earlier on, we noticed that a lot of our customers tend to be more complex customers. So one is the scalability. So if you think of a multi-entity solution for Business Central, that really kind of like almost like you can have hundreds of companies virtualized in a one single Business Central environment, right? So you're not duplicating tables. You're not, to do that, there is a lot of complexity. So we right now cover already 13 regions around the world. And that was a conscious decision we made to make sure that we do support multiple, and say with the subscription management or our property leasing solution or our healthcare space. So scalability for us is always very, very critical. And to be honest, very, very early on, all our solutions were built around scalability. So we would do kind of like mass processing of transactions, like on Dynamics 365 Finance, we have customers like PMI, which is a project management institute.
Yeah.
We had something like 135 million transactions. So in terms of how do you kind of basically make sure you're multi-threading when you're building the software, scalability is very, very critical. But combined with scalability is compliance, right? To make sure when you're building these complex solutions, and whether you're meeting sort of FIRE 15 or 16 or GAP compliance, ASC 606 or ASC 842, those are all very, very critical, that you have the right people on the team with the right kind of background to be able to architect the solution the right way, but also do complete business analysis on those two.
And so, well, thank you for sharing that, Lak. So when you talk about Europe, I'm based in Europe. The big difference with Canada, United States, languages.
Yeah.
So how do you manage something like languages, or is it mainly the UK maybe that you're active in?
That's a very good question, and this is something, by the way, we are still kind of like we are kind of continuously looking at more and more investments in making sure we have if we need to support on those areas. The good news is that mostly we found that with English, sort of like it has worked okay. But if you're in France or Germany or
Different story.
Netherlands or wherever different areas in
Yeah.
we do try to cover that and try to provide that support to be able to work through those, right? So that's why, again, is a language is one thing, but also building trust with the partners as well, right? So typically what happens is that when you are new, it takes many years to, the partner who worked with us who came from Great Plains, they know us, right? Sort of, but the hardest part is to work with the SIs, right, who are kind of not familiar with you, and how to make them kind of trust you, and making sure that you're going to not let them down in any way, right? So these areas, so localization is very important, but also you're right, the languages is our kind of like, as we go further down, we will be investing more in those areas, but also making sure we have the local people available in those regions as well. So this is for us is previously organically we did work with places like Australia, New Zealand, and we had customers in England before, but we are now expanding into more and more into many parts of Europe, sort of. So we pretty much have a number of countries already covered. So it is true that it's the other thing we found is collaborating with other ISVs as well, right? So we can basically work where an ISV is stronger, say in Europe, and we are stronger in North America. We collaborate together to help each other to say, okay, how do we kind of basically make sure that we combine our effort, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned before, I think the biggest thing to me is the more ISVs collaborate together and provide a solution to the end user where there's no friction, right? Whether you're looking from the point of view of your integrations and technology side of, but also in terms of how you work together for marketing and sales and combining resources to be able to really, Microsoft's got something called multi-party offers, right, which is very critical piece of that. And I think in the future, I hope it all comes under one umbrella where basically you can run that through Microsoft, and you no longer have any of those kind of differences in there. And I like how the Copilot agents, the way Microsoft is lining up in terms of how that will be monetized, and it's very much based on a consumption basis. So we're extremely excited about that and looking forward to working and collaborating with we already kind of collaborating with a number of ISVs and SIs in Europe, but for us it's still a journey, right? So we're not by no means we're just scratching the surface at the moment.
Yeah, well, that's great to hear. Like, I've told you in the beginning, well, before we started the recording, time flies when you're having fun or when you're having this conversation. And indeed, 38 minutes have passed since our first words recorded. So my last question, like, and you're, well, you know the Dynamics world inside out, you know Microsoft, you know the ISV world, you know your challenges. If there would be one request to Microsoft that you could make that would make your life as an ISV easier, well, maybe not only your life, but the life of many ISVs. And easier, when I say easier, it means your company becomes even more successful. What would be that one ask that you say, like, hey, this would really create a lot of impact on the ISV, the Dynamics ISV world? What would be that ask?
So that's the amazing question there, Ingmar. So I would say the one I would like to see is the basically marketplace transactability. So that is to us is very critical if you're doing business around the world, and Microsoft already has a presence in those cases, right? Mm-hmm. So in Azure Marketplace, it's phenomenal because Microsoft's done a phenomenal job on that. But on the Dynamics 365, there's still some work to be done because a lot of the work is through SIs, right? So most of our work is through our SI partners, right? So there's a lot of area needs improvements in there to be able to scale that, right? To be able to price changes, to be able to SKUs and the transactions and so on. So we actually work in that area. We ourselves are working to through our subscription management solution, trying to eliminate some of those pain points, right? But I think that's one area that I would hope Microsoft really go deep in, especially both on Business Central as well as Dynamics 365 Finance as well.
Finance.
So both of them, because these are both critical, where Microsoft can see ISVs how much value they bring to the table, right? So right now, it's if you think about Microsoft partner competencies, right, MAICPP, you want to make sure that Microsoft can see the visibility of the amount of revenue we influence as being an ISV. You know, we are purely an ISV. We work with SI. We don't do implement Business Central or Dynamics 365 Finance, but we are deep experts in our space that we bring value to the customers.
Well, yeah, and adding to that, and different perspective. Well, no, it's not different perspective, but I think adding to that what you're just mentioning around the marketplace, and I'm working a lot on the Azure marketplace, so I know the value of the Azure marketplace for, let's call it Azure partners. In the end, what you want to create scalability, you need to remove all possible blockers so that your partners, as ISV, can transact your solution as easy as possible. And of course, transactability is not the answer, but it's an important answer for partners, let's say in Australia,
yes,
in Thailand, in Singapore, in an easy way to consume, to consume, sell your solution to their end customer. And transactability is part of that answer.
You got it. So if you think of the different currencies, we want to be able to transact in euros or Australian dollars or whatever the currency in Singapore. So that for us is very, very critical in those areas to be able to do that, because we don't necessarily have presence in every corner of the world, and Microsoft does. I think that would be phenomenal once we have that to the level where we can, because really I was talking about the multi-party offers as well, right, or private offers. So Microsoft is already looking at those things, and I think it's just a matter of time to be able to fix those some of those areas and help ISVs like us for sure.
It's a very valid answer to my last question, Lak. Thank you very much. Sorry, you wanted to say something? Sorry, Lak.
No, I can't thank you enough for inviting me to this, and I'm honored to be.
Thank you, Lak.
It
was a great conversation, especially also on the culture, the importance that you put on the culture within your company. Really very much appreciated for taking the time, Lak, for having this, for being on this podcast. I hope it will not be the last time that you'll be on this podcast. I would love to have you back, like in maybe a year and a half, and see the progress that has been made, hopefully on the multi-party offering and the marketplace in general. But thank you so much, Lak, for joining. And to Kurt, if he's listening, I'm very sorry that you couldn't join, but wishing you all the best in your recovery. So thanks again, Lak. Wishing you a very good long day, and talk soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ingemar. Thank you to our partners. Thanks to our customers and Microsoft for sure.
Thank you, Lak. Bye-bye.